I am Shondale Wilhite, and I was once a victim of sexual and domestic abuse until one day I realized that I had a problem and decided to do something about it. Then I began to shine. Spoke out and got out of that toxic relationship. H, helped myself. I ignited my own fire. N, I never looked back. And E, I evolved. I am the published author of my first book entitled The Reality Behind the Illusion. And I am making a difference through my truths and inspiring lives on how to defeat giants of sexual and domestic abuse. I changed my mind about being afraid and ashamed of my past, and instead now I embrace it so that I can reach out to others and let them know they are not alone and they too can shine.
Good evening. Welcome back to Shine with Shondale. I'm glad to be back this week. We have a great show lined up for you tonight. And we have as our guest, Miss Yashika Foster, who is retired from the U.S. Army after 25 years of active duty. She is a two-time best-selling author, a licensed cosmetologist, makeup artist, and a certified life coach. Hello, Miss Yashika. Are you there?
I am. How you doing?
I am well. I'm so glad you joined us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I surely appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How's it going in your neck of the woods? How's everything going your way?
Oh, man, we having some crazy weather here, day in and day out. I think we've gotten all the seasons within the last couple of weeks. So it's crazy.
Yep, that's about right.
People are trying to stay healthy. So we're going to jump right in here. We have a lot to cover tonight. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and where you're from, a little bit about your background, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I always tell everybody that I won't say I have a typical story, but a lot of my childhood stems from, or similar to a lot of people's childhood. I come from what I call a teenage mother and a hustler for a father. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I am the child of, my mother had two children, myself and my younger brother.
Hold on a second. You're sounding awful.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm sorry. Can you
try to say something again?
Let me see. Maybe
that's a little bit. Yeah, because it was a little muffled there in the beginning.
Okay. Talking through this. Okay, good. But I was saying that I tell everybody kind of the same story. I come from a teenage mom and a hustler for a father. My father was also a military veteran. He joined the service a couple of months before I was born. My mom wedded him when she was 16, and I myself was born in 73, and my mother had my brother 2 years later. So for me, growing up in Detroit, Michigan was just the way, I guess you would say, that you see it on TV. Detroit as a whole, that fast-paced city life. My family, both sides of my family, actually migrated from the South. My grandparents got up north to Michigan when the Great Migration happened in the 60s and 70s, when everybody came from the South and went up north because the plants were opening up, like Ford, GM, Chrysler, things like that. So that's how both of my parents got there. And then they just so happened to meet in high school. My mom was on her way to high school, and my dad was in high school. Back in the 70s, unlike today, of course, my mother was a little younger when she met my father, but back then it was totally allowed. You know what I mean? To us back then. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
It is still. This is the engineer. Okay. It's still sounding muffled. I'm not sure if it's the connection or if it's. Are you speaking on a speaker or you directly into the phone?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better. That is much better. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Much better.
Okay, good. It was probably this speaker that I have, and I thought I was being fancy getting the speaker as opposed to my phone.
Yeah. No, it was really hard to understand, but you got it now. You got it now. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. Okay. And so so my parents met, and they married, and my mom they married. What is it? January of '73, and I was born that March of '73. Shortly after, I went through life like everybody else, trying to find myself. I had some experiences as a young girl that a lot of that I hear a lot of people. I was a victim of molestation as a young age, as well as other things, abuse in different forms, physical, mental, emotional, as well as sexual. So when I was about 12 years old, I saw a movie called Officer and a Gentleman, and I know a lot of people saw that movie. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I decided that was going to be my life. I decided at 12 years old that I was going to join the Navy. And so the purpose of that, believe it or not, was that I wanted to buy a monkey. So in my mind, I was going to join the Navy. They were going to give me all this money because I wanted to be a singer. And so my mother, of course, being a young woman, couldn't afford to send me to any type of singing school or any type of studio time. And so I knew that I had to have money in order to go into the recording studios, because being from Detroit, it's Motown. Everybody did music back then, And so, yeah, typical, right? So I decided I wanted to, I said, well, okay, I can't make money here because I knew I needed to work. So at 12 years old, I decided I was going to join the Navy because of the movie, The Officer and the Gentleman. And then with my additional money, I was going to buy me a monkey. Now, I don't know what the monkey was about, but somewhere in my young mind, I wanted a monkey. So I knew that the military would give me money for both things.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that crazy? And I tell people that story, and I actually met one other person that wanted a monkey as well, and she, too, is from Michigan. And I said, maybe it's a Michigan thing. Somebody wanted a monkey. So,
I was thinking that's a Michigan thing. My favorite artist wanted one too, Michael Jackson. So it couldn't have been just
and he had one. He had one, Bubbles. He had one.
Right.
So so for me, that was my dream. And so when I decided to go ahead and go talk to a recruiter my senior year of high school, and I went to a high school in Detroit, Michigan that was for smart kids. Like it was one of the schools where you had to take this test to get inside of it, and once you were there, you had to maintain a certain grade point average. And so it was kind of unheard of for us to go to the military. It was, it was just very unheard. We went off to do, things, just things. And matter of fact, one of the Atlanta housewives actually went to high school with me. And, we went off to do, crazy things or whatever. So, but me, no, I wanted to get away from Detroit. And so when I talked to a recruiter, the Navy recruiter, that particular day, January of '91, the Navy recruiter was out to lunch, and the Army recruiter brought me into there, and he was like, "You don't want to join the Navy because you can't even swim." He was like, "They're not going to get you. You can't even swim." And so in my mind, I didn't know because, of course, back then there wasn't any Google, so I didn't know that, not knowing how to swim, wasn't going to get me into the Navy. So he tricked me, needless to say. He tricked me. So, so I decided to go ahead and join the Army. He laid it out real nice. As a matter of fact, I was going to, and when I first came in, I was what you call a truck driver, and we called it a motor operated transporter. And so he made it sound like this job was going to allow me to drive for the president. And I was going to go to some type of, what is it called, defensive driving course. I would learn how to do stunts you see on TV. And so he was real good at his job, this recruiter. He was real good at his job. So that was going to be my job. So I was like, yes, sign me up, because I want to drive for the president, and I'm going to be a stunt driver and a defensive driver, and I'm going to be spinning around on TV like you see on TV. So, yeah, that was me. Needless to say, none of that happened. I never even went to defensive school, defensive driving
Oh my goodness!
school.
Wow.
So yeah,
That would have motivated me too to say that I'm going to try for the president.
absolutely, absolutely. And what was so terrible about it, looking back now that I'm older and understand how it worked, back in the 90s, when I first talked to a recruiter, it was after the initial war, the first Iraqi war that happened the ground war happened in December 1990. And so at that time, if you joined the military and when we took our ASVAB test, if you scored anything over 100, then you could almost be anything you wanted to be. Well, I scored over 100, but because they were trying to fill slots because of the war, the job as a truck driver came up, and I didn't have sense enough to say, you know what, no, I don't want to do this. I want to go into computers or whatever. So, yeah, so he got me real good. I always wondered what had happened if I went in the Navy instead of in the Army.
Wow. Yeah.
So
wow. So when you say we weren't, it wasn't likely that we went into the military, did you mean we like women? It was likely or just period?
The kids from my school, because of the school that I went to.
Okay,
like
gotcha.
I said, this school was one of those college. It was called back then. It was one of the top 20 schools in the nation at the time. Okay. And so it was just one of those things where I can't even remember a recruiter even coming to the school. Like if they did, I didn't see them. Because they wanted us to go to these fancy colleges and stuff.
Right. Yeah. I got you.
So it was just students that went to that school. But I joined the Army, and my enter date was September 11th, 1991. So the day the towers went down was actually my 10th year anniversary in the military. And so September 11th, 1991. So that's kind of my childhood and how I got into the military. I knew my mom wasn't going to be able to pay for me to go to college. And I knew that no matter what I did, I had to make money now. So that was more of my, and then I wanted to get out of Detroit. Those were my top three, just being able to survive on my own and get away from, a burden to my mother, and just see the world. So that was kind of my motivation, period. And I made that decision at 12 years old.
Wow. And, the fact that movie actually just struck your interest as far as going into the military, period. And then you just that as a young child into after graduating and all of that, and knowing what you wanted to do. You want to travel the world. You wanted, all of these things that you knew that your mom couldn't afford, and that was a way of doing that. So all the time that you were in the military, do you feel as though women were treated differently in the military than a male?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The military. This is how I see the military. Every good thing that ever happened to me in my life, every bad thing, or I say most bad things, most good things, my highlights, my lowlights, self-discovery, who I am as a woman, all of that happened while I served. I joined at 18 and I retired at 43. So my whole adult life was spent in the military pretty much. And I saw a lot of differences between the way women were treated versus the way men were treated. And of course, I didn't have anything to really compare it to. When I was a teenager, I worked at like fast foods and things like that. I had never been in corporate America because I joined the Army at 18. So I didn't really have anything to compare it to. But I knew that there was a difference between being a female that was in the military and being a male that was in the military. And it was very evident in a lot of the things that went on in my career.
And so, like, I'm just sitting there imagining, like, life in the military. So what's like a typical day? Like when you wake up in the morning, what's a typical day? Because, we get up, we, get up, go to work, put in our day's work, take care of the kids and that kind of thing. What's a typical day like in the Army?
Okay, so if you're not like on special assignment or something like that, so a typical day would be most first calls, or shall I say first formation, is about 6 o'clock, because on most military installations, if not all of them, the flag comes up at 6 o'clock. And at that point, you salute the flag. So I would say you would get to work about 5:30 in the morning, right? And so if you backwards plan from there, depending on where you live or how far you are from your job, you may have to get up about 5:30 in PT uniform, physical training uniform, and you'll go to work at 6 o'clock. Typically, PT will start shortly after that. Most units, PT start about 6:30. And so you'll do PT from like 6:30 to 7:30. Then you'll be released for personal hygiene. So after that, you'll go home, get breakfast, do whatever you need to do. And work call is between 8:30 and 9, again, depending on where you're stationed. Okay. So you'll go to work at 9, and from 9 until about 11:30, you'll work. So you get about 2.5 hours of working, and then we break for lunch. Most units, lunch is from 11:30 until 1 o'clock or 1300. You come back, you from lunch, you work again from 1 until about 5:30 or 1700, 1730. Typically, most first sergeants want to have end of day formation, so he can account for everybody and see if the task at hand for that day got accomplished. And, then from there, you kind of disperse unless you are in a leadership role. If you are in a leadership role, first sergeant may have, which is the leader of the company, non-commissioned officer of the company, he or she may have a powwow with the leadership. So if you're in a leadership role, you may get out of there about 6:30 to about 6:30 in the evening. And so you will spend literally about 12 or 13 hours a day at work if you're not in a leadership position. If you are in a leadership position, then you can be there for about 14 hours a day. So, and it's typically Monday through Friday if you don't have anything going on which moves you to work on Saturdays and Sundays. But as service members, we're on call 24/7, which means that I could leave work and get a call, midnight to come back to work, and I will have to come back to work, period. So it's just, so it's very tiring. But I tell everybody, it's more like we'll like to say it's like a 9 to 5, and that's the best way I can explain it. It's like a 9 to 5 in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways it's not, because we have a lot of days off that civilians don't have off. We have 4-day weekends at least once a month. We get 30 hours or 30 days per year to vacation because we get 2.5 vacation days per month. And so, we get a lot of days off if we're not at war, that is.
Yeah. Wow, I've always wondered that because, like, what are they doing? They always say they do the most work before we wake up in the morning. What are they doing?
I remember those commercials.
Yeah, I always wondered that. I really did.
And we literally do. And as a civilian, I retired now. June will be 4 years for me. And even though I'm retired, for whatever reason, whether it's weekends or not, if I'm still in bed come 7 o'clock, I feel as if I've let the day get by me. I kid you not. I still feel that.
Yeah. I can believe that because when you've gotten into a routine for 25 years of doing something, and then you leave that, it's just like, the whole day is gone. I wasted a whole day. If I slept 7 o'clock, the whole day is already gone.
Yeah. And unless I'm sick, I never sleep in. Like I almost never sleep in unless I'm like sick or I went to bed 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Even if I go to bed about 3 or 4, I'm still up by 7:30, 8 o'clock every day.
Yeah. And we talked before about some things, and one of them was MST that you brought to my attention, and I had no clue what that was. So can you tell us what MST is?
Okay, yes. MST is the acronym for military sexual trauma. And what that is defined in a way that I guess is relatable for the military, but it's just the act when a service member experiences sexual assault or sexual harassment at any point in the military career. And so the reason why the VA has put a name to it in that way, as opposed to just calling it sexual assault or sexual harassment, is because now it's a claim within the Veterans Affairs Department, because we have service members, male or female, who have been traumatized to such a degree that it makes them unable to work or hold down a regular job or even, just be okay in life. Because some are actually traumatized to the point where, they're recluse to the house, or they, have a hard time forming relationships. I mean, because it's separate from PTSD. And that's why another reason why VA has separated it from PTSD, because back in the day before 9/11, whenever a service member was harassed or assaulted in any kind of way, they would put it up under one thing, which was the PTSD, or back then it was like shell shock, right? Or they were always related to it having more of a mental health issue. But now it's totally separate, and it's MST, military sexual trauma.
And as I have been talking to so many different people, this whole sexual abuse thing, it just happens everywhere. I don't care what it is that you're doing, whether it's in your home, whether it's in your church. Now we're learning about, this happening in the military. It's like wherever you are, this thing never seems to disappear.
No.
And it causes so much, like you say, trauma on a person to where it's hard for them to cope in life.
Yep.
And that's the reason why I try and talk to, so many different people, so that what I heard today, my pastor was talking about, he said that one came forward, because one young lady came forward, she wanted prayer because she had sickle cell. And just by her coming forward, others follow. And, she was like the voice for them, because they received prayer as well. And I feel the same way about this issue right here. When one comes forward, more will follow.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. I was gonna. Let me tell you my first experience. Because to give you more of my background. When I first came in, I was enlisted for 15 years, and then after that, back in 2006, I got my undergraduate. So I went to OCS, which is Officer Candidate School, and so I became an officer. So I retired as an officer. However, when I came to the Army in '91, they sent me to my first assignment. I was only there for 15 months. After that, I went to Germany. I was a 19-year-old kid, straight out of Detroit, right? And the first time I experienced MST or sexual harassment or sexual assault was as a young soldier who had just got to Germany. And there was a leader, and I was an E3, a PFC. There was a leader that came into my barracks room, because I just got someone. Even though I was married, my husband hadn't got there yet, because I had only been there for about a week or two. And a leader came to my room, and I was a very respectful soldier. I don't know if you ever heard of parade rest. Parade rest is the position that you get in when you're talking to someone that is your leader, because it shows more of a non-threatening stance. And so that position is with your both of your hands and the small of your back and your legs kind of spread a little bit, so eye to eye with that person face to face, right? So that's kind of a non-defensive move. And so whenever we're talking to someone that's superior to us, that's the position that we're told to get to.
Yeah.
Well, this E6 came into my room, and immediately I didn't know anything because I'm still, a year into the Army at this point. So, that was my immediate response, was to go to parade rest. And so he came into my room and he's asking me, hey, Private, are you getting adjusted? How's everything going? And so I'm talking to him, hey, Sergeant, I'm good. Yes, everything's working out well, whatever. And no sooner than I was talking to him or giving him a response, he immediately attacked me. And when he attacked me, believe it or not, because we are the military, right? So my first response was not to defend myself. My first reaction or my first thought to what was going on was, if I attempt him in any kind of way, other words, defend myself against him, then I'm going to get in trouble for hitting him or doing something to him. That was my first thought. I never even thought about what he did or what he was doing was wrong. I was thinking about, oh my God, if I don't allow him or if I respond in a defensive manner, I could get in trouble because it's my word against his, because clearly I had heard things about that, coming up, even only been in the military for a year. So there was a minute there where I just didn't know what to do because I was an obedient soldier. And so as an obedient soldier, I didn't need anything that was going to tarnish my career, and hitting a non-commissioned officer was definitely something that can tarnish your career. Exactly. And back then, as a young soldier, who was going to believe me over him, right? That was my first thought. And that went on for a minute. Literally, he was attacking me to the point where he was trying to restrain my hands. And because, of course, I'm in position of parade rest. But when someone comes towards you, your first reaction is to kind of throw your hands up in defense mode,
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. But again, I still hadn't, been forcefully with him because I didn't want to get in trouble. And that went on for about a minute or so before that part of me that was from Detroit, 25 years of serving, I have 3 regrets of my career. And that one right there being one of them, because I was able to make sure that he did not violate me in any kind of way other than the initial attack. Tell anybody, because I didn't think that anyone would believe me. And that particular non-commissioned officer went on to sexually assault someone else. And when she told that she had been raped, no one believed her.
Wow.
And so that is my number one regret in my military career.
So when she came forward, did anybody else come forward after that, or let's just say for you, for instance, did you just say, forget it because they're not going to believe me either, and just kept that hush hush?
Yep, that's exactly what I did. I talked to her about it because she lived in the barracks as well. And I remember, and this was like 92, this is 93. And I remember the leadership during this time, because again, things were a lot different back then. I remember the leadership finding things that was negative about her instead of them, reacting in a way to say, okay, we need to see what happened and investigate this. It became, well, she's a bad soldier anyway because of this. Or better yet, she was also married. But better yet, we know for a fact that she has had sexual relationships with other people. So we don't think that she really was raped by this non-commissioned officer, as opposed to her willingly having sex with him. And, oh, yeah, by the way, let's charge her with UCMJ because that's adultery.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And, I think just as you were telling that, I'm thinking to myself, if those allegations were true about her, And that's something that got back to him. He knew that he could possibly use that against her if she ever said anything, Yeah. But it still doesn't justify it or make it right that it happened. Period. But it just, oh my goodness. So what ended up happening? So she got charged with something. So did she stay in the military?
I don't. That part right there is fuzzy to me. I remember her going through, and back then again, when you were a young soldier like I was, a E3, 19 years of age, it was almost like your parents in your household. Like you don't know what goes on with mom and dad behind closed doors because those are grown folks' business. You're a kid, you stay in a kid's place, and so that's how the Army was structured, and it's still structured that way in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But more so back then than it is today. So I remember that particular soldier. She was an E4. She was the one ranked higher than me. And I remember her not being there too much longer after that. And I didn't see her anymore. So I don't know exactly what happened to her, but I remember she and I having a conversation about it. And I told her what happened to me. And she told me that I should have told somebody. And it got to the point where I didn't know what to do, who to believe, where to go to, or nothing, because, you'd almost, it was definitely a fear, because you didn't know because we seen the people who told, and it just seemed like, and again, this was in the 90s, when they told, it was almost like their career came to a halt, or they were punished in some kind of way. It was. That's the way it appeared to us, or at least to me, through the eyes of a 19-year-old child back then, or young woman back then. I didn't know what was right and what was wrong. I knew being attacked, but it was almost one of those things where after a while, you kind of started going with the culture of the military. And then I've seen it even after that, because after I had been in Germany for about 4 years, I went to Texas. And by that time, a little while after, I made E5 and then E6. And I remember as an E5, which is a young non-commissioned officer, I remember it being another situation similar. Another young lady in my company, but not in my formation, who literally went through the same thing. And I remember this particular soldier, she had a lot of things going on, because right around the time that she said that she had been sexually assaulted, she also got a DUI amongst some other things. And so I remember the chain of command just lumping everything together. And it was like they were saying, well, because you've done these things, there's no way that somebody actually raped you. You're just a bad soldier, and you're trying to, get somebody else in trouble. You know what I mean? And so that was the stance that they took back then. So, and that was the culture of the military back then, at least where I was at.
It's not just, it doesn't sound like it's just the culture of the military, because that's the way it has been in everything, in Hollywood and so many other places, because the men feel as though they have so much power and control over the woman that, nobody's never going to believe you. What were you doing here? Or what were you doing there? Or whatever. So, it's like it justifies everything that they do. And these are people that, you look up to, like you say, you were very respectful, but you were respecting this guy who attacks you in that manner. And then you're like, okay. So now what do? I can't do this because of this, or I can't do that. And so that's when the trauma comes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, my burden, because I was lucky, I consider myself, for that particular experience, that one right there, I consider myself to be lucky. But at the same time, again, my guilt comes in the fact that I knew that she was telling the truth because of what he had tried with me.
Yep.
And so it's almost one of those things, if I had done this, then this wouldn't have happened,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
And
that's
explain this to me, because so you served for 25 years. So once you enlist, so I've always heard that you have to stay at least 4 years. Is that correct?
most initial enlistments are 4 years, but there are exceptions to that. Some jobs, depending on what era you come in and things like that, you can come in for 3 years. But that's one of those every now and again type of situations. But for the most part, there's a 4-year commitment for active duty, but you have to stay committed to the military, what we call our IRR, for another 4 years. So no matter what, once you enlist into the military, you're obligated for 8 years. Now, you can serve however many of those years you want to, up to 8 years active duty. You can do 4 active duty, 4 reserve, or inactive reserve. And what that simply means is that within the time you get out, so say, for example, you come in and you only do 4 years. For the next 4 years afterwards, if we have a conflict or a war that breaks out and they need you, they can call you back and you have to come. Yeah. So, and then, of course, there's a way to get out of that, and a lot of people do activate their ways to get out of that. But for the most part, I've seen it. When I was a drill sergeant from 2002 to 2006. And before I went to be an officer, and there were IRR that was activated because of the war on terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan. They brought back a lot of the IRR soldiers, and it didn't matter what their physical capacity was or what, because I remember seeing people that were, a little different than they were when they were in uniform. But if we needed them, we brought them in, and that was it. Yeah. So yeah. But I mean, I'm sorry.
What after that experience, I was just wondering what actually made you just stay. Was it just your goals that you were you set out to do, and that you were going to just accomplish them, and just try and get over the fact with in quote unquote, because I mean that's not something that you easily just get over, the trauma that happened, but what motivated you to stay after that? Because you came in, I mean that happened like right as you went into the military.
Yeah. And then there was another incident after that, where another guy attacked me when I was at HOP. We call it a HOP, from Germany to Michigan, and I had to have a one day layover in Dover, and kind of the same thing went down. But what made me stay was at my end of my first 4 years, I got pregnant with my oldest son. I was married because I got married right after basic training. That I joined the Army September 91. I got married that December of 91. And I got pregnant in 94 and gave birth to him March of 95, my oldest son. And I remember a non-commissioned officer, E7, coming to me at the time. I was an E4 about to make E5, and my last name was Davis. And she said, well, Specialist Davis, she said, you might as well go stay in the Army, because surely you're not going to go back to Detroit. What you going to do in Detroit? And so when she said that to me, I was like, well, yeah, because I knew that being in the Army, I had benefits. My son would be. Yeah, I had, things, and I hadn't finished my degree yet. So there was a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I knew I could do it while I was in. And so that kind of was my driving force, was me having my son, and I think everything I did from that point on, although I had a child after that, 8 years later, but for the most part, my oldest son was always my reason for everything I did in the military. Always my reason.
I just really consider kids a blessing, because I think kids are what a lot of times drive us to do the things that we do.
Absolutely.
There were a lot of times.
There were a lot of times when, I'm telling you, if it weren't for my son, I probably would have got in trouble. Because, they always say you can take the girl out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the girl.
Oh, absolutely.
And there were times when I would do things or say things or want to say things when folks of higher rank said something to me, And it was
Yeah.
him and his face that always allowed me to keep my mouth shut, because I knew that if I said what I really wanted to say, I would have gotten myself in trouble a lot of times.
It's over.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe it.
A
Oh,
lot
my
of times.
goodness. And so now that, okay, we're going to fast forward. And so you have a foundation called, or a company called One More Step. Tell us a little bit about One More Step.
Yes. So One More Step is a purpose and vision coaching LLC that I developed back in 2018. And for me, when I first got out in 2016, when I retired, I chose to retire after 25 years. I thought I had everything together. The old soldiers will tell you, make sure you got your finances in order, make sure you have your degree done, you know what you're going to do, all that kind of stuff. So when I retired, although I had a master's degree in marriage and family counseling, I also am a licensed cosmetologist, and then I'm a freelance makeup artist. So that's what I was going to do. I mean, I had it all set up. I had that LLC called for my collage, because I have two LLCs. I had all that going on, thinking that I was going to do hair and makeup when I got out. And 1 year post-op or post-military, I literally started to have a mild nervous breakdown. I didn't know where it was coming from. And I had other people that had got out before me. My best friend at the time, my ex-husband, some of my good friends, all of them had got out before me. And so I thought that if I did what they told me to do, that I would be okay. But it wasn't until everything started to happen and my life just went into just a turmoil that I went back to them same 5 or 6 people, and I asked them about the emotional stresses that was going on. And when I started to talk to them about it is when they finally started to relate to what I was saying. And it's almost like we get out and we have no identity about who we are. Things that most people go through, we're going through it 10 times, because it's almost like we never lived in this world before. One of the first challenges that I remember having when I was deciding to retire was where I was going to reside, where I was going to call home once I got out. And I remember when I was going through my master's program, I had to go to my school for an intensive, not an intensive, I can't think of the name of it, but where you actually, when you go to, go to school for counseling, you have to go back to the school and you guys do like real events, counseling with other students. Yeah. And my particular problem that I brought to the table with me was where to retire when I got out, or where to reside when I got out of the military. And I remember one of my fellow students asking me, why was it such an issue? Because moving from place to place was part of the military culture. So why is it now that I'm having an issue with it? And I didn't have an answer for that, And then I thought about it, and I came back to her and I told her, I said, this is the difference. When I go from military duty station to duty station, no matter where I'm going, it could be in another country, another state, another city, wherever, I know that I'm going to be open or welcome with open arms. Rather not by 90% of the people, 100% of the people, somebody's going to welcome me with open arms, right? I'm going to feel like I'm part of a family, part of a team. If I'm in the military, and let's just hypothetically say one day I sleep in and I don't show up to work, and, it never happens, but let's just say it's 10 o'clock in the morning and no one has heard from me. Someone's going to call me several times, and if they don't get an answer from my phone, they're going to come to my house looking for me, right? So someone's always got my back, right? Someone's going to always have my back and make sure I'm okay. In the civilian world, if you come up missing from your job, they may call you a few times, but for the most part, they're not about to come to your house, most jobs, right? It's almost like, okay, well, when she do show up, she just need to know she ain't got no job no more, right?
Basically.
So, and that's why it was such a stressor for me, because I knew once I got out, I wouldn't have that that, someone's got my 6 anymore. I wouldn't have that anymore. And so by that time in 2013, well, I retired in 16, but in 13, I got my little cousin. And when she retired, by that time, when I retired, she was 3 years old. So I had her, and then plus I had my now 16-year-old. My oldest boy was a freshman in college. And I was a single woman. I didn't have a husband. And so those things, was playing with my emotions, because all I was thinking about was, well, what if I'm at work, or my kids are at school and I'm at home and I fall down the steps or something or whatever. Who's going to come looking for me?
Who's going to come?
Yeah, who's going to come looking for me? And so I was like, well, do I go back to my hometown where I can have somebody that's going to check for me every now and then? Or where do I go? And I literally did not know where I was going to retire. And the only reason I ended up staying here in Virginia was because I decided to stay here for a year no matter what. And when I went into looking at places to rent that was big enough for my family, a house big enough for us, I was going to be spending well over $2,000 a month in rent. And so I had property in another state, but I knew I had outgrown that property. And so I was like, well, why would I pay somebody else's rent? And so I ended up just buying a home here by the time I retired. And that's kind of how I got here in Virginia, was simply because I didn't have many other options. I knew that Michigan was always an option, not necessarily back to Detroit, but it was an option. But then I thought about it, and aside from family, I didn't know Michigan no more than I knew any other place, because I had been gone since I was 18.
Exactly. So it's like you were a foreigner to the.
Exactly. And the only place I really knew was the inner city of Detroit. But nobody moves back to Detroit. You know what I mean? Nobody moves back there. So I, of course, I was thinking about some of the different areas in Michigan. But again, those places were foreign to me as well. So I felt like, so that's how One More Step got developed, because as I was going through these things, I realized that I wasn't the only one. And the more and more I got to talking to my other friends and asking them questions about what they were going through. And then I had to remember their transitioning. I remember when, my friends went through literally my friends called and, I didn't even know if I need to call now, because I thought they were suicidal. Literally 4 or 5 years after he retired, from the time he retired and the time our divorce was. But he literally called me cursing me, and I had no idea why. But I realized that all of that was part of the fear, the process of, you just don't know, you just feel like out of place, and so I knew I wasn't the only one. So from that point, I started to talk to other veterans aside from my circle of friends. I went to the VA hospital. I sat down. I had conversations with veterans who had been out, who had served in Vietnam. Some of them had served in the first Iraq War. I had extensive conversations. I spent numerous hours at the VA hospital and anywhere that I could find veterans. And I just started talking to them about their experience. And I remember one guy telling me he had been out for about 20 years. And I asked him, how do he get used to being in this world? He says, you never get used to it. You always feel out of place. That's what he told me.
And that makes sense to me, because I can't even imagine being gone away. So, it makes me think about, so we're talking about military now, but it makes me think about somebody that's in prison.
Yeah, that's what it's comparable to. Yeah. Comparable to that, institutionalized, right? And
it's like
something
a whole
simple,
different life or something.
It's a whole life. And one thing I use when I talk to civilians, I compare it to them, right? Compare this to them. So how you go to the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and you go register your vehicle? You already know that when you go to the DMV, it's an all-day event for you, right? You go down there, you got your water in your purse, you got your snacks, because you're going to be there for a minute.
All day,
And y'all know that. For us, I go to my DMV on the installation. I take a number, And before I take a seat, someone calls me to the counter. And that's it. That's it. So, and that's our life. So when you talk about, everything else, it's like, no, we don't do that. That's not like get in, get out. Let's get this over with. What we talking about? Let's just like, why are we here? Why are we still in line? Why are we doing this? If I go to a place like, say you go to your job, or if you had a job and you go to your boss about a particular thing, right? They're going to direct you to another department to say, hey, go talk to this person over here, go talk to that person over there, whatever the case may be. In the military, if I go to a particular section and I need help, let's say I want to access my military records, the person who's in charge of military records may not be in that day. But guess what? Somebody in that office is going to give me my military records because everyone knows everyone's job and we're cross-trained. So we don't have time to come back tomorrow. I need you to go ahead and log on, give me what I need so I can be on my way because we got bigger things to do. And so when you think about that, like we're not afraid of, I know in the civilian sector, a lot of times it's about respecting each other's job for job security and your job is your job and their job is their job. And that's it. We don't have that in the military. Although we have particular job titles, we're still cross-trained in everyone else's job. So somebody can do whatever needs to be done, regardless. You know what I mean? And and then
on the civilian side of on the civilian side of it, everybody feels threatened.
Exactly.
Learn my job for.
we don't have that. We don't have that. And so it's a whole different feeling, like literally. And you'll hear veterans talking about things like that when we go to places and we're like needing something and you're like, okay, well, can you just get it for me? And they're like, well, Bob is out to lunch or he's on vacation. Well, can't somebody else do Bob's job? Well, no, you got to come back when Bob's in. And we're like, wait a minute, what? Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy. Absolutely nuts. Yeah, I know. And then you got to come back another day, stand in line all day long. Who has time for that?
Yep. And so, and that's why it's all foreign to us. Like, and of course, there's a lot more than that, but that's the basis. That's like the way that I can, when I say those two things, is the way I get civilians to understand, and then when we act a certain way, people automatically assume that we're hostile or we got PTSD or we're this or they're that. They're very quick to label us like really, and it's not that. It's just that we've been accustomed to doing things a certain way. And so it's like we have to reprogram our minds, So initially, when we separate from the military, a lot of us have a problem with adjusting to the civilian sector the same way a prisoner has when he or she's been institutionalized for many years. It's a process, and sometimes it never gets better. And then when you take that and couple it with any issues that we may have, whether it is anxiety or depression or PTSD or TBI or MST, when you couple all that together, that's why, we're quickly labeled in a lot of ways, and that's why I always say we're just misunderstood. We're just simply misunderstood in a lot of ways.
And that's where your program really helps people that are transitioning from the military into civilization, so to say. And I really applaud you for forming such a program as that, because so many people need it in order to be able to just cope with this new world that they're living in now. And the fact that they know they're not alone in it. And that's why I really love the fact that so many people come forth and, they share their experiences with others, because there's so many people out there that are waiting for us to come forward and speak up about what it is that we've gone through and how we deal with it and how we cope with it and all those things, because they want to know too. Like, you've been there, you know about that. Man, what do you do? In order for to help you with this and that, and I just really, really applaud you for that. So we're getting ready. We're running out of time, but I want you to tell us a little bit about your book. We have about 7 minutes, and so I do want you to tell us about your book and how we can get it. I know you have a couple of them there, so tell us a little bit about your book.
Yes. So out of the 3 books, 2 of them are military related. The first one I released in 2018, and that one is called The Realization of Irrelevance, Finding Your You After the Military. And so my baseline for that one is we as veterans are learning to live structured in an unstructured world. And so that book tells us, tell that veteran how to use some of his or her service skills to be implemented to our regular everyday civilian skills so that we can not feel so foreign. So I talk about finding a mentor, developing a routine, just doing things that, because sometimes when we get away from military, we want to completely get away from it. Like we want to do an about face or a 180-degree turn and just forget that we ever served, right? And so I want a lot of my veterans, all of them, to take some of those skills and embrace them and take them to the civilian sector. Because what we see as additional duties, people actually seek out of us, So like people are hired into positions for leadership roles, right? That's the only job to lead a company or for this or that, right? So if you hire me as your IT tech, you may not know because I served that I've also been a leader. I've had, 200 soldiers up under me, and I'm able to, move them from one point to another point successfully. So those are things that people embrace, that we have those leadership skills. And so, when you learn, so that's what the book talks about, just kind of getting them to take those things and implement them into their day-to-day lives so that we won't feel so foreign in this world, right? And then the third book that was released in December, because that was the first book and that was self-published. The third book that I released was released in 2019, December 2019. That was an anthology. And the voice behind that one, the title of the book is The Voices Behind Mental Illness, Series 5, The Life of a Veteran. And that one right there, the visionary author on there, Vanessa Abrams, her brother was a veteran, and he committed suicide a couple of years ago, and he was 50-something years of age. And she believes that his military career and his inability to adapt to the civilian world was the biggest push behind why he committed suicide. And so this book right here addresses different people's perspective from the transition from the military to the civilian sector and the mental health issues that we have associated with serving. And so in both of those books, you can find them on Amazon or directly from me. And people can reach out to me at Coach Sheikah at onemorestep.com, or they can join my Facebook group, Life as a Veteran, or go to my website, www.onemore-step.com.
Well, thank you for that information. We now know where we can find all of this great information. Sheikah Foster, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing all of the information that you shared with us. Hopefully this will help someone else. If you have any other concerns for the callers, if you have any other questions or concerns, you can either reach me on Facebook at Shondale Wilhite, that's ShondaleWilhite. And we are now down to the last minute of Shine with Shondale. So we will be back on next week, same time, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, every Sunday, Shine with Shondale. So until then.
And Shondale, this is Shondale.
Yes.
Hi, this is Colette. I enjoyed this show. Good. How are you?
Good. I didn't know if you were on with us tonight.
Oh, yeah, every chance I get. I don't want to miss it. You've got a compelling show, compelling guests, lots of information, and I try not to miss it. But, yes, I am here, and I just want to say thank you for disseminating such important information. And I know someone who just recently went through the same thing, not in the military, but I do have military nieces and nephews, and it does take a toll. It takes a toll. And for those who go through PTSD, it really takes a toll. And I just say, try them and do as much as we can to support them. So once again, you've had a great show. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the guest disseminating the information that she has and talking to people about what goes on and how they can at least mitigate some of the trauma and some of the feeling of disconnect.
We've got
once they become a civilian.
Yeah, Colette, we've got some crosstalk going on back there. Something's going on. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah,
I can,
yeah.
yes.
There's something going on, some crosstalk or something going on. It's hard to understand.
Okay, I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I just want to say again, thank you, Shondale, and also let the people know that Change Matters will be back on the air on Tuesday, 4 to 6 in California, 6 to 8 in Dallas, and 7 to 9 on the East Coast. And get ready. We've got lots of things going on for Black History Month. We've got Joseph Luckett, who will be on with us on Wednesday on Conversations with Colette and Corliss. We've got Mr. Robert Hernandez, who will be with us on Tuesday, and his book is Winners Get It Done. So be sure to join us on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then again on Sunday. Shine with Shondale. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up this month. It is Black History Month, and it should be Black History all year long, but we're going to give them their just due. So thank you again, Shondale. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you to your guest also. And please join us again Tuesday for Change Matters with Kenny Hendricks and Colette Williams. And on Wednesday, it's In the Mix, Conversations with Colette and Corliss. And then again on Sunday, Shine with Shondale. So thank you very much, folks. And Shondale, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Good night, all.
Good night.